Aquanwa watched in growing horror as her husband reached up and detached his own arm, not cut it off, detached it, like removing a piece of clothing. Thank you for lending this to me, the prince said pleasantly, handing it to the rider. The rider took the arm, nodded with satisfaction, and simply disappeared. Not walked away, not rode off, vanished like smoke. Now, listen up, my friends. I'm about to tell you a story that will make you think twice about being too full of yourself.
This is the tale of Princess Akwanwa.
And trust me, by the end of this, you understand why your grandmother always told you pride comes before the fall. So picture this. In the ancient kingdom of Uli, there lived a princess named Akwanwa. And when I say this girl was beautiful, I mean she was the kind of beautiful that made the sun itself stop and take note. Dark skin that gleamed like polished obsidian, eyes deeper than forest pools, and a smile that could make warriors forget what they were fighting for. But here's the thing about Aqua she knew she was beautiful, and not in a healthy, confident way. Oh no, this princess looked at herself in that gilded mirror every morning like she was worshipping at an altar. More suitors, mother. Surely father's kingdom has run out of men who think themselves worthy. Can you believe this girl? Her poor parents, King Oku and Queen Adanade, loved their daughter so much they were blind to what she was becoming. Classic case of, my child can do no wrong. You know? Now, the suitors. Oh, the suitors. Let me tell you about this parade of heartbreak. There was a Mekabrave warrior defended the kingdom's borders, right? Aquanwa took one look at his battle scars and said, unsightly marks that would embarrass me at royal functions. Battle scars, people. The man literally bled for her kingdom. Then there was Prince Chidi from Ingo Kingdom. This man wrote poetry so beautiful it made grown men weep. You know what she said? His hands are too soft, clearly. He's never done real work. And don't even get me started on Ifeanyi. This merchant prince was so wealthy he could have doubled Uli's treasury, but oh no, he smells of the marketplace. Meanwhile, in the shadows, old Mama Ngozite palace servant, who'd seen 3 generations come and go, she's muttering prayers under her breath because she knows this pride is going to lead somewhere dark. But nobody listened to the old woman. Who listens to servants when a princess sparkles so bright, right? And then, my friends, they arrived. First, you heard the drums. Not just any drums with a rhythm that made the earth itself pulse. Deep, resonant beats that seemed to say, something's coming, something's coming. Then you saw them. A convoy like nothing Uli Kingdom had ever witnessed. At the center rode a prince so handsome, so perfect. He looked like the gods themselves had carved him from their dreams. His skin was smooth as river stones, his features absolutely flawless, and when he smiled, it was like the sun decided to live in his face. His clothes? They shifted colors in the light deep purples becoming midnight blues, gold transforming into liquid fire. Behind him rode his entourage, each man more striking than any prince who'd ever courted Aquanwa. They moved with this synchronized precision. Too perfect, too coordinated. Like they were all controlled by the same invisible string. From her window, Aquanwa watched this procession, and for the first time in her life, her heart hammered against her ribs. Finally, someone worthy of me. When this mysterious prince spoke to King Goku, his voice carried the weight of distant kingdoms and untold wealth. Great king, I come from the kingdom of eternal twilight, where the sun and moon dance together in the sky. I have heard whispers of your daughter's beauty, and I must confess the whispers were poor storytellers. Now, here's where the story gets interesting, because while everyone else was mesmerized by this perfect prince, there was one person who saw the truth. Old Kalu, the village drunkard. Once upon a time, he'd been the finest hunter in 3 kingdoms, but grief over his dead wife had driven him to seek comfort in palm wine. Now, people crossed the street to avoid him. So there he was, sprawled under this massive iroko tree, sharing his sorrows with another bottle of palm wine when the convoy arrived. And in his drunken state, he slid down the tree until he was looking up at them upside down. Now, you have to understand something about the old ways. In the world where Uli Kingdom existed, there was one rule every child knew from bedtime stories. If you want to see spirits for what they really are, you have to look at them upside down. And what old Kalu saw made him forget his drunkenness instantly. Where others saw magnificent horses, Kalu saw creatures of shadow and bone. Where others saw handsome riders, he saw figures flickering between human form and something else, something with too many teeth and eyes like dying stars. And the prince, the prince was the worst of all. Upside down, Kalu could see his perfect features were just a mask, and beneath it writhed something that had never been human. Evil! Kalu screamed, stumbling to his feet. They're not men, they're spirits. The prince is not. But his words slurred together. His gestures were wild and uncoordinated. The crowd looked at him with disgust. Someone get the drunk away from here. Kalus lost his mind completely. Even when he grabbed at people's robes, pleading with them to listen, to look again, to see what he had seen, they pushed him away. Who believes the ravings of a man who can barely stand straight? That very evening, Aquanua burst into her parents' chambers with eyes blazing. Father, I must marry him tomorrow if possible. Aquanua, we know nothing about this prince or his kingdom. Surely we should take time to... Time? Father, look what has come to our doors. A prince worthy of me, finally. Do you want him to leave? Do you want me to end up with some farmer's son because you were too slow to recognize perfection? And just like always, King Oku felt that familiar weakness whenever his daughter's happiness was at stake. Against his better judgment, against his advisor's whispered concerns, against that strange unease settling in his chest. He nodded. The wedding preparations consumed the entire kingdom for 3 days. Every flower gathered, every musician summoned, every cook pressed into service. And Aquanua, she floated through it all like she was finally claiming her rightful place in the universe. The ceremony was magnificent. Almost. Too magnificent. The prince's vows were perfectly crafted, his gifts breathtakingly expensive, his demeanor flawlessly romantic. But several older guests later said something felt hollow about it all, like watching actors perform rather than witnessing true love. As they prepared to leave for the prince's kingdom, King Oku held his daughter and whispered, "My daughter, if anything ever seems wrong, if you ever need to come home." "Nothing will be wrong, father. I'm finally getting everything I deserve." The procession that left Uli Kingdom was spectacular, but as they traveled further from home, as the landscapes became stranger and the shadows longer, something began to change. They had been traveling for 2 days when it started. "My lord," called one of the riders, his voice carrying an odd formal tone that hadn't been there before. "I believe it's time." The prince turned with a perfect smile. "Ah, yes, of course." "Time for what?" "And then, my friends." And then, Aquanua watched in growing horror as her husband reached up and detached his own arm. Not cut it off, detached it, like removing a piece of clothing. "Thank you for lending this to me," the prince said pleasantly, handing it to the rider. The rider took the arm, nodded with satisfaction, and simply disappeared. Not walked away, not rode off, vanished like smoke. "What?" Aquanua's voice came out as a whisper. "My lord," called another rider. "My legs, if you please." And again, her husband calmly detached his legs and handed them over. The second rider vanished. One by one, they came forward. His other arm, his torso, his beating hurt, which he pulled from his chest with no wound left behind. His skin peeling away like a discarded robe. His bones, his organs. Pieces of himself that should have meant death, but left him somehow still speaking, still smiling. Until only Aquanua remained, sitting frozen on her horse, staring at what floated beside her. A head, just a head, suspended in the air where her husband's face had been, still wearing that perfect, terrible smile. "Hello, wife," it said, and now she could hear something else in that beautiful voice, something ancient and hungry and utterly inhuman. "I do hope you're not disappointed, though I suppose it hardly matters now." The forest around them pressed closer, trees twisted into shapes that hurt to look at. This was no mortal wood, but a place where the boundary between the living world and the realm of spirits wore thin. "You see," the floating head continued conversationally, "I was drawn to you the moment I heard about your self-regard, such delicious vanity, such perfect, pristine pride. I knew you would be the one to give yourself to me willingly. And you did, didn't you? You practically begged for it." Akwanwa tried to speak, tried to scream, but only a strangled whimper escaped. "Oh, don't look so frightened. After all, this is exactly what you wanted. You rejected every decent man in your father's kingdom because you thought you deserved something more extraordinary. Well, my dear wife, you certainly got it." And there she sat, in that evil forest, surrounded by her scattered wedding gift silk stained with dirt, gold dulled by shadow, precious stones that now seemed like worthless pebbles. Her beautiful wedding clothes torn and dirty, her jewelry heavy and cold against her skin. "I want to go home," she whispered. The head laughed a sound like wind through dry bones. "Home? Oh, my darling wife, you are
You are
home.
home.